Okay, so this is Dennis Prager. He's the founder of Prager University. He's going over the idea of basically people believing that God spared Donald Trump when someone had tried to assassinate him.
Certainly supporters of former President Donald Trump believe that God spared President Trump in that unbelievably close call to death that he had. I mean, like an eighth of an inch, a quarter of an inch maximum. For those of you outside of the inch world, well, how many centimeters?
So that idea, if one believes that God spared Trump, does that indicate that God chose not to spare JFK or William McKinley or Abraham Lincoln? Does Trump have some kind of role that is bigger than the role of those men? Also, what about the guy that was shot in the crowd? God chose not to spare him.
Meters would that have been? Does anybody know? Has it been estimated? I mean, but it's a matter of centimeters, and he would have died. He would have been instantly killed, essentially. And so many people say that it was the hand of God, because had he not turned his head a little bit at that exact moment, it would have been death. It is extremely understandable why people who want him not to have been killed, and that, by the way, that could easily be people who don't even want him as president.
Now, a lot of the people who would have that idea, there was some kind of divine intervention, probably tend to have favorable views of him in the first place.
You don't have to be a Trump supporter to be happy that he wasn't killed. It would have been a trauma in the American culture and lifeblood had he been killed. I mean,
that's a fair point, because a lot of the things just would have gotten really chaotic. Even people like Sam Harris, who's been extremely critical of Trump. You can see another video where he talks about Trump's assassination attempt. Even people like Sam Harris tend to say that it was a good thing for the country and that things would have been really chaotic had Trump been assassinated.
I would hope the same thing would be true the other way around. I can't imagine that a lot of Trump supporters would be happy had his opponent, then Joe Biden, later probably Kamala Harris, would be killed. It would bring no joy to me. And that's not my party. It's not my people I support. It would be a catastrophe to have a candidate for the presidency or the candidate for anything, the candidate for a local school board. These are body blows to a society to have leaders assassinated.
These are the types of things that happen in like South America, like Brazil. You have sometimes people running for office that are killed, Argentina. And so even though there have been presidential assassinations, we haven't seen one for a while, and it's not like a good thing for the country. It puts everyone a little bit like on edge, makes people uneasy.
They're particularly terrible things. So many people are saying, including President Trump himself, were it not for Almighty God, I wouldn't be here today, as he said when he gave his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention. So I'd like to just deal with this issue of God's intervention and offer you my thoughts on this question, because I've thought about it all of my life. It was not triggered at all by people saying that God intervened on behalf of Donald Trump at that moment. But I've thought about this all of my life. And my position is we cannot know. There are times where it really does seem to be divine intervention. But we can't know. We can believe it. We can hope it. but we can't know it. So the most obvious reason in the case of...
So along that logic, you can't really know like anything when it comes to like religion and God. People can study and they can try to like go off of feeling, but we don't really like know if there's not a way to like falsify it. There's not really like a way to like prove it.
Donald Trump, the most obvious reason is, yes, Donald Trump was saved, but this poor firefighter protecting his family, he was killed. So you have a very real question. Why did God intervene on behalf of person X and not person Y? And that is why I have always, all of my life, been troubled by people who were certain that God intervened on their behalf or somebody else's behalf, because the immediate question in my mind would always be, well, why not on all these others' behalves? I thought about this when I was a child and I learned about the Holocaust. So people say, you know, prayer, your prayers will be.
This is going back to that point that I brought up before, where it's like JFK or Abraham Lincoln or other people that aren't spared. Like you have to ask the question, is it a little bit disrespectful to some of those people when you're saying that someone's life was like spared for a purpose? Depends on who you ask. Some are going to say like, yeah, that is offensive to the people who died. And others are going to disagree with that.
Answered, for example, well, 6 million Jews' prayers weren't answered. 5 million Ukrainians under Stalin, their prayers weren't answered. 60 million Chinese under Mao, their prayers weren't answered. I mean, it's endless. So that's not to say, again,
So again, with Prager's video and even this video, it's like, you're basically just dealing in like abstract, like you're dealing with things that aren't really verifiable. Now, the video I would recommend watching, it's my video where Sam Harris highlights basically like Trump's assassination and like the implications for that, and then also maybe how ridiculous it is for some people to indicate that any criticism of Trump is like off limits now, when Trump has been such a polarizing figure for nearly a decade in our political system.
I'm not